David Toulis.
Hi, this is David Toulis. Thank you for joining me here at Nuganomics.com. I am in the middle of reading Kenichi Ome's book from 1995, The End of the Nation State, The Rise of Regional Economies. I'm behind. But as I like to say, I am the slow man on the block. I'm the slow man who asks the dumb questions and who has to think a long time about the answer, and sometimes I find that the answer doesn't answer the question at all, and I have to ask it in another way. And I am glad you're here. My name is David Toulis, and I thank you for joining me here at Nuganomics.com. Our show is every day from 1 to 3 p.m. here at the Copperhead station. The Copperhead, of course, is the snake with the venom, but it's also a picture of the disaffected person in the Northland during the Great War who didn't want the war and who didn't want his sons being brought back for burial from the battlefields in the South, which the North had invaded with the purpose of integrating these rebellious states into the federal union again. And the Copperhead was the man who Abraham Lincoln would put in prison. He would just nod and so from the order of the defense secretary or the war secretary's office would go and arrest some editor out there in the hinterlands, and because he was criticizing the war and wanted peace and wanted a settlement. So we're the Copperhead station, Copperhead 1240, and also Copperhead 910 in South Pittsburgh and Marion County. There's a story that I wanted to mention today, and I guess I'll touch on that first, about South Pittsburgh's flood recovery. A very nice piece by Ryan Lewis, a correspondent for the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, talking about the sort of religious and Christian conversation about flooding and about damage to property and about loss. And of course the whole question of disaster touches on the providence of God. And when floods come, even though men can be deemed responsible, there could be bad engineering, there could be Corps of Engineers slip-ups, there could be calculations that go bad. There are always men involved in things like that, of course, but sometimes not, and sometimes we recognize that God in His providence uses men and uses secondary and tertiary causes to bring things about. There was a prayer service at the Princess Theater in South Pittsburgh, and there were people who prayed, who asked God for His care and His mercy, and who thanked Him for the damage not being as great as it might have been. There's one person quoted, let's see what her name is. Well, she said, "Please know that I love you and I love South Pittsburgh without question. God has blessed us in an incredible way. Don't ever forget that. Always walk with pride when you tell someone you're from South Pittsburgh." And there's a longtime resident, Paul Robinson, who's quoted by the Times Free Press as saying, "I also remember how God restored everything that we lost fourfold." He's referring to a 1973 flood, much worse than the more recent one. And Mr. Robinson goes on to say, what He did way back then, He'll do the same today. And it's interesting how in the South, unlike in the North, there are common expressions of thanks for protection, for rescue in disasters like that. This is something that's not just cultural. It is of course cultural, but it has part to do with the extended blessing of God of the people in the South, people who are ones I would suggest have the sense of antithesis that you have to understand and believe in order to believe in God, right? Because you're northerner, you're libertarian, not you're libertarian, but you're Unitarian. You're a religious person who denies that there's any God. God is just kind of folly, or it's imagination, or it's a misfire of that poor Southern person's synapses in his brain, and he believes in God. There's not that sense of antithesis. And of course, antithesis is black and white, right and wrong, good and evil. And if you're a Swiss man like Andreas Bruwiler, whom we had a chat with Thursday, you learn to live with these conflicts and kind of see things in terms of gray, because you see both sides. But that's not what I'm really talking about here. But if you are a northerner you are, if you fall into atheism and agnosticism, you will hear these things in the South, and you say, boy, those Southern people, they just really have their Bibles around a lot, don't they? And read them, don't they? I think the neatest thing that I saw as I was looking at kind of the news cycle for the morning was the hoopla reported on TV 12, WDEF, about B's Restaurant. I know you've probably heard about this already, but I've had a router outage at my house for several days, and I'm not quite as current as I would like to be, and don't have the pulse on things that I would like to. But the story that Megan Wise tells on TV 12's website is about Doug Bradshaw. If you haven't heard, apparently someone from the Obama team called Doug Bradshaw, who's the owner of B's Restaurant, and said, hey, the president would like to come for lunch. This was, of course, would have been on Tuesday. But Doug Bradshaw said, well, we're sorry, we're closed on Monday and Tuesday. So it was a snub, I guess you could say. He said, according to TV 12, basically got a phone call, said he was going to be here, was thinking about eating at the restaurant. I said, we are closed on Monday and Tuesday. They said, thank you, and hung up. And of course, it's just a Facebook explosion, a little mini explosion that doesn't have any real fragments. It just has little flower petals that kind of bang on the outside of your skin, and then they blow away with the wind from the air conditioning vent. And there's no injury involved, and no one really takes offense. It's just one of those little flaps that happens on the network. And he says, in my mind, it's a wonderful picture of, here's a man in Chattanooga who's got a restaurant, and he has his routines. His people are off. I would suggest they'd be off on Sunday, the Lord's Day, but apparently they're open. But they'd get a day of rest Monday and Tuesday. And that's that. Okay, my people they've worked hard, and they're going to be off. And I'm sorry, we're not open. This is a picture, a little bit of local economy saying, hey, we're here. Our people are important, and our routines are important. And sorry, we can't help you. And they snubbed the federal chief executive. And it's interesting though that Megan, in her story on WDEF.com. Points out that something odd also happened during the regency of President Bush. She said, let's see, comments pouring on B's Facebook page. Okay, Bradshaw said he would have been glad to host the president. Bradshaw said, why, sure, I'd love to have the president eat here. And then it goes on to say, B's also had a request from President George W. Bush to eat there 6 years ago. And quote, they wanted us to close down where we could come, where he could come eat. And I told him I couldn't close. I'd have a place for him. I'd reserve a room or something for him, but I couldn't close. I wouldn't turn away my customers that made my living. So here you have Mr. Bradshaw, who lives out the local economy ideal at B's Restaurant. He's not going to close down the restaurant, so this important official from the national sector can swoop into Chattanooga and eat a hamburger and fries and some vegetables. No, and of course his entourage and maybe some favored local people, or perhaps or folks from Tennessee. He wasn't gonna throw out his customers. He was going to serve his customers, and he wasn't going to open when he wasn't open. So this is a picture. This Mr. Bradshaw, Doug Bradshaw, is a picture that I find very enjoyable about this self-respect, this sense of, well, we're not going to just bend over backwards for a political. I mean, after all, President Obama is a political figure, right? He's not anything beyond that, and we're going to have our way. We have our day off, and of course, if President Obama had wanted to come on the Lord's Day and said, can you do it on the Lord? I'd say that would be more important to say no, or to say we have our routine and we're closed. That would be far more valuable. Well, as you know, we are at the first of the month here, and a lot of Christian churches had the Lord's Supper yesterday, which I like to think about in terms of local economy. And if you think about the whole Christian theory, it's really pretty amazing. Christianity posits that God has a relationship with man, and it is mediated through Christ, the historical figure who died on the cross, and who rose from the dead on the third day. Now, I was looking into a book I have on higher criticism, and it was pointing out that the higher critics who dissolve all meaning out of the Bible, starting in about the mid 1800s, the Germans had their way with the scriptures. It is a fact that Jesus Christ died on the cross, but it is a faith event. It is a faith event for them that he rose from the dead. So it's not a fact anymore. It's just a faith event, and we're all deluded if it's just that, right? If you're a Christian who took the Lord's Supper yesterday at your church in the monthly repast with God, the resurrection of Jesus has got to be more than just that. And the Lord's Supper is a picture of local economy, because you have a relationship between the Creator and man, and it's over something that can't be done in the abstract. It has to be done at a table, right? It is a table. And of course there are various ways that the Lord's Supper is taken by Christendom, but it's always conceived of as a meal. It's always conceived of a way in which God opens a table of bounty. It's a symbolic table of bounty for his people. And they come having repented of their sins. And I want to talk later in the show about real estate prices in Jerusalem at the time of Nebuchadnezzar, because there was a wonderful story that we heard about yesterday. We read chapter 32 of the book of Jeremiah. And there's a theory of economics that is in fact endorsed by the Rothschild family, the banking family. And I want to tell you a little bit about that, because it's something I think that gives confidence to you here in a time of seeming dislocation, seeming dysfunction, seeming alienation. And we want to recognize these things, not because like nationalist talk show hosts and nationalist perspectives, we want you to feel oppressed by them. I think we need to recognize these alienations, such as school testing, for example. We need to recognize these alienations as important and useful. We need to make them useful to ourselves. We need to make the agony, if you will, the poverty that you may be feeling right now. We need to make those useful to ourselves, and I think there's kind of a spiritual labor there. I can't really help too much in that. I am just, after all, a talk show host. That's something that the church works on the Lord's Day. A worship service should always be about making use of these desperate things, such as floods and deaths and cancers and blindness and losses. The Christian theory is that for God's people, these are useful things upon which they must build. And we face a national economy which is bankrupting. It's bankrupting, and thanks to the stewardship of the good people, as we like to call them, and so we're suffering a lot of losses. We're suffering the loss of capital. We're suffering a curtailing of future prospects. They go out, they trickle out ahead of us a little bit, and then they just stop. And we're afraid that if we keep moving toward those stopping points, we're going to fall off, because our prospects seem so short. The world ahead, the nation, if you will, but even my own life, my job, my dealing with my children, my dealing with my wife. Right, you're my guy listener here at Copperhead 1240, the Guy Station. Even there, you feel that things are coming up short. Somehow you've not invested sufficiently. You've not invested love. You've not invested attention to your wife. You've not invested time with your children. You've been obsessed with your job, right? You're just an employee, and you put in all those extra hours, and you're doing it for the company, and you're doing it for the cash flow. But somehow you just have the sense that maybe you're going too far, and there are other fuel tanks that need some filling from you. And so our goal here at neweconomics.com is to kind of look at the situation as realistically as we can and try to make use of shortened horizons. And I think the national picture is very, very short. And I've been reading, as I mentioned, this Kenichi Ohame book. It's a 95 edition, and it's one of several volumes I've been going through lately that talk about sort of the end of the road for our great God and Savior, Uncle Sam. And I think there are reasons to kind of view the future apart from the United States, okay, even apart from Tennessee, if you will, apart from the whole idea of government service, which of course means the welfare state, and prosecutions and all kinds of high-handed impositions on the marketplace and high-handed work, if you will, and you stop right there's against people who run army stores and things like that. I think the whole idea of government has lost a lot of its credibility. And what I'm offering in my analysis is that we kind of understand that there's a kind of a post-governmental future, and we don't have to make it that way. Of course, if you're a traditional Democrat or if you're a member of the Republican Party of Hamilton County, you're not going to like that. You're going to keep thinking, well, we got to get the right guy elected or the right gal, right? And then we need to affect policy. We need to have this person have the right policy inputs, and then we can affect things. And your whole schema is toward organization, toward the managerial state, if you will. And you're just a functionary in that machine, in that system. And the whole testing regime, which I hope we can talk about today some, is a kind of pornography. It's a kind of managerial pornography that we subject children to. We subject them to this system which lets no. You come on back. This system which lets no soul develop in private, which lets no thought arrive at without being meddled with from above, which lets no one do anything independently, because we have teamwork, right? Teamwork is just another redescription of dependency. We can't have anybody thinking independently because, well, that would be dangerous. And so, as the page 1 of the Times Free Press describes today, we have this sort of total testing scheme in Tennessee, and we think we're a free people, right? We think we have what the Constitution calls free government. Well, I think we've kind of gotten away from that, and what I hope to do is to recognize and have you, my listener, recognize that you may be stuck in a public school with your family, but you need to, first of all, before you can get out of it, or before you can vote out the taxing system for it, you have to realize that you're in what effectively is a kind of a prison, a kind of intellectual prison that is based on a physical structure, of course, the school system in any given county. And then there's the whole marketing apparatus and the whole obligatory rules and customs and even routines that are cultural now. And they come out and they wrap you in, they pull you in, and they make you part of the service delivery system for this governmental cartel, this governmental system that we've come to grow to love this and accept it. We have been very gracious as a people, and we've been very forgiving, very, very forgiving as a people, that the continuing failures of cartelized schooling services are really it just needs more time. We just need to maybe we need to pass another federal law, another No Teacher Left Behind perhaps would help. And if we just are forbearing with the system, forbearing with the county, with Dr. Smith, and with the teachers, and the people who supply all the papers to public school, the textbooks, if we just wait, things will get better. And of course, we have the confidence that our school is never that bad. Our school is always the exception. We don't have a sense of that larger picture, and so maybe what I can do in the way of being useful to you, my listener, is to suggest by broad strokes that there really is an alternative. And in a nutshell, in this dance of interests, if you will, there are alternatives, and we have to, if we kind of accept my suggestion that there's a sense of there being legacy systems that are holding on. If we have a sense that these systems are not inevitable, that they rose from the rise of the managerial state back in the early 1900s, if we can see a little bit about where they came from and understand as favorably on its own terms as possible its origins, then we can conceptually look beyond what we have. And I'm not saying that we need to do anything particularly right now. I'll leave that up to you. But I think what we have to do is accept that the free market works, and we have to accept that the free market looks favorably upon the individual, whereas the managerial state, the state that Mr. Omade, the Japanese financial advisor, says is passing away. We have to see that these are a legacy, and legacy means that at some point it's going to come to an end, right? These are things they're living, sort of like zombie banks in Japan, right? The whole banking sector in Japan that was, and not just banks, but whole companies, whole corporations, multinational companies that are in everything, whether it's dog food or parts for computers. These companies in Japan made these parts. Well, you have these zombie corporations that are kept alive by artificial means. And legacy systems are like that. They, Fannie Mae is a legacy system. Freddie Mac, these are legacy systems. And what about Social Security? That's a very important one that your parents are relying on. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think Nudenomics.com is about these things as problems, but we want to look at the solutions. And I want you to have a kind of a wry smile on your face as you consider some of the problems we're trying to identify, and think that B's Restaurant really did the right thing. Part of the solution is the free market globally, but it's also the solution is also a free market locally, and it's always in the locale that the loss of liberty is most keenly felt. It's always in a particular street, a particular office, a particular factory here in Hamilton County or Marion County. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how can we understand these obstacles and move around them, these systems. We can't go around them in a lot of ways. They're just so great, and so they suck out so much capital from the marketplace that we are effectively trapped. But we have to see that even in the trap, we can do what Jeremiah did, which was buy real estate. As the mound works were being raised against the walls of Jerusalem, he bought land. He bought land in Anathoth, which is somewhere in that republic, in the Judaic Republic. This is David Toulis, and we'll be back in just a minute. We're going to talk about dancing, putting your hand in the small of her back, and knowing that that's not where it belongs. It needs to go higher. David Toulis will be right back.
Hey, I text some people.
Hi.
On your AM radio.
Yeah, our show is on
910 for 1190.
On our radio station is copperhead1240.com. They can watch it live.
Take Copperhead Radio to listen on the go. On your
okay.
smartphone,
It's copperhead1240.com.
search for Copperhead
Okay.
1240. Watch the Copperhead
Yeah,
live
I'm
at
texting people
Ustream.tv.
anybody here in
Okay.
Of course, you
Canada
can
who
always
watches
follow us
listen
on
to it right
Twitter
now.
at Copperhead Radio. And like us at Facebook.com/Copperhead1240. So there you go. Whether you're listening on the radio, watching us on television, taking us along with your smartphone, or just socializing on Facebook, make Copperhead Radio a part of your daily routine.
Copperhead 1240, Southern Rock, kicking country.
Can I get you a water?
Yes,
The
please.
Man Radio
Why don't you stand right here?
Fishing, NASCAR, Tennessee Talk, Southern Rock, kicking country. Copperhead 1240, 1190, and 910 a.m.
Let's see who else I can get. Trying to get people to listen too, because we know.
Prescriptions.
How far do we reach?
It goes down to about Lee Highway.
Eastridge Pharmacy have a growing list of customers who love discount prices and personal service. Saturation marketing by chain stores isn't the real story. So two things. Personal service at Hamilton Discount Pharmacy proves the value of local economy. Affordable prices at Hamilton Discount Pharmacy and Eastridge Pharmacy prove the power of the agile, independent player in prescription drugs. Visit Hamilton Discount Pharmacy at Shallowford and Lee Highway and Eastridge Pharmacy on Ringgold Road at Spring Creek. Call 892-5955. 892-5955 for Hamilton Discount Pharmacy at Shallowford and Lee Highway and Eastridge Pharmacy on Ringgold Road in Spring Creek. Call 892-5955 for Hamilton Discount Pharmacy and Eastridge Pharmacy. Oh, yeah.
You and your sweetheart need to spend some time together? Want to learn something sweet, fun, and cultivating? Ballroom dancing is a gratifying way to spend an evening. If you want to learn all the basic steps and press your hand into the small of her back, join us for lessons starting today. At the Ballroom of Hixson, you'll learn all the basic steps with your gal and have a great time. Trained ballroom instructors bring you along in fine order. No partner required. Click the ballroomathixson.com. or call 394-6428.
You want to look right there at my listener, my viewers right there. Hi, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Gotcha.
This is Amy.
We're like this. I need something to stand on.
Sorry, I probably should have something, but I don't.
Good weather for your Monday. High settling into the upper 80s tonight. A few clouds, lows into the upper 60s.
Yeah, I need to.
A slight chance of an afternoon storm Tuesday.
Yeah,
Back into the upper 80s. Scattered showers and storms more likely for the midweek.
May I move my stuff out from your way? I'm sorry.
Extra fun for booking on Monday.
Just don't push a button.
Hojo.com on Monday, and you can receive
The internet will go down if you do.
gift card. Visit
I know what it is.
HojoHappyMonday.com for more info. And
What was that?
I ran audio before. And television. I've done audio.
Okay.
The Man Radio Station.
So we're going to talk about, these are my notes right here, the antidote to abstractions, the cultivated person, a little bit on your background.
Antidote to abstractions, exactly.
Huh?
Oh, to
Antidote to abstractions. Dancing is physical, right?
Right.
So we want to have the listener recognize that dancing is a way of getting out from the trap of the internet, the trap of the digital life, right? The Facebook life. Have you had enough relationships that are abstract?
We will not hear much of this until
Have you?
2015.
yes, tired of it.
Well, okay.
We need more face to face.
Well, that's what dancing is all about, okay? Dancing is about that very thing.
Games that would extend through all
And
of
it's,
next season, but it probably will not take effect immediately. An appeal is expected, and during that
Yeah,
process, Rodriguez would be allowed to play. Among the other big players expected to be suspended, Nelson Cruz of the Texas Rangers and Johnny Peralta of the Detroit Tigers. Reporting live, Steve
A
Butler,
book?
CBS News.
Here, briefcase.
American diplomatic posts in Muslim countries remaining closed this week. It's caution after the heightened terror threat revelations last week. Intelligence suggested operatives were in place to carry out attacks. CBS News national security analyst Juan Zarate says
I have many guests who are shorter than I am.
a key bomb maker.
Everyone I dance with is very
Okay, now you want to put your mouth right on the, yeah, just like that. Because
And you've seen in the last
because it's a unidirectional mic.
We also do a ball ring wheelchair.
in terms of bomb making, yes.
It's a whole
Yeah,
different ball game.
we might be able to mention
Going
that.
about business as usual, heading to work.
Something no
A
one
state
else does.
emergency order prevented a possible strike by
Good for the
labor
veterans.
unions. Roxanne Sanchez, who heads one of the unions, says BART management has not bargained in good faith.
There is no reason why we have to continue this drama, continue this stress on the public and on the workforce.
BART says the unions have misrepresented the proposals they've been given. Hundreds of people who live in Lawtell, Louisiana are waiting for word on when they can return home. Forced out when a Union
So is there
Pacific
any way
train
to go
derailed
back to
yesterday.
see this later on?
Yeah.
I can go online.
I'll send you a link. It's on, well, it's through our website. I'll send you a link. If I have time, I may make an excerpt.
Can you put it to
Ohio's court
our
decree that
Facebook
deals
page?
with voter ID and provisional
I'll put it on our
ballots.
website.
Advocates argued if the decree
Well, you can
expired,
certainly.
voters could become
It's
disenfranchised
Ustream.tv.
with
Have you ever
election
been there or
boards
know
setting
anything
up
about that?
different rules.
Well,
A U.S.
we'll,
military helicopter
we'll write it
crashed
down.
today at the American base in Okinawa, Japan.
I'll
Four
let Tammy
people
figure
on
it out.
board.
Write down what we're on. She'll put it on our website and on our Facebook, and then go out to a lot of people.
Air Force Lieutenant Hope Cronin. ESPN reports the NCAA is investigating Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Manziel. It's alleged the Texas A&M quarterback was paid for signing hundreds of autographs back in January. The report says Manziel, known as Johnny Football, collected a 5-figure fee. Wall Street Dow is down 34. This is CBS News.
The Copperhead 1240, Southern Rock, Kicking Country, Tennessee Talk.
The Man Radio Station.
Copperhead 1240.
Live from sunny Daisy, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Hi, this is David Toulis. Thank you for joining me here at Nukenomics.com. Our show covers local economy and the free market. I'm always very interested in local economy people because they're so real. They're like the owner of bees. He's a real man who's got a real agenda, and he doesn't want to stop serving his customers just because President Bush is stopping in and wants to hog his restaurant. And when President Obama wanted to come to Chattanooga and eat at Bees because he had heard about it, it was closed on Tuesday last. And the owner said, "Sorry, we're closed," and that was that. And he's taken a lot of heat for it. But I think we should offer a wry smile at his sense of routine, because it's that routine which is the solid basis of prosperity in the long term. And your prosperity is not based on the fact that the president may have come to your restaurant, but that you have regular, happy, satisfied customers who know you're good and who know you're solid and who can count on you. And that's local economy. And these are personal, almost physical characteristics. And speaking of physical characteristics, we're going to talk with Amy Anderson, who runs the Ballroom in Hixson. She is a dance instructor. And we're going to find out a little bit about why you should be interested in dance, particularly because it's a very sweet thing to do with your wife. And it's a way of building relationships. So I have questions about how that happens, and why is it that in a dance class that this happens, even though you're not actually communicating verbally necessarily, except she may be saying, "Don't stand on my toes." You are having a physical existence at that moment, and it's not digital. Okay, it's not the internet. So we're going to ask Amy Anderson about that. Amy, welcome to Nukenomics.com.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you for having me today.
Well, we're glad to have you. And I have had dance classes with my wife Jeanette through the auspices of one of your teachers, and so I see you snared a good teacher. And
Denny Lennon is awesome.
Well, now tell us a little bit about where my listener is interested in maybe hearing about ballroom classes. Your class meets where? The classes meet where?
Well, we have classes all week, but we have people who are brand new in dancing on Monday nights at 6 o'clock. If you have two left feet, that is a class for you. I specialize in those. And then starting at 7 o'clock, we have a little bit more intense, still beginning class, but it starts at 7 o'clock to 8:30. And then on Wednesday, we have 7 to 8:30 class and an 8 o'clock class, and those are all brand new beginning classes. And on Thursday we have a beginning class also, starting at 7 o'clock to 8:30.
Now my pitch to my listener, Amy Anderson, is that knowing how to dance is part of being cultivated. Can you talk a little bit about how dance is a way of cultivating one's person?
Well, I'll tell you what, in this day and time, we definitely need to be able to do more contact. We're texting, we're on the internet, we do emails, and we never have face-to-face meeting with people. And in dancing, we learn how to socialize in the correct way, in a very physical but correct way. You can get to know someone a little bit or more, just however you want. The kids today, they need this. My son went to a high school dance, and he came home and he said, "Mom, I'll never go to high school dance again. All they did on the dance floor was, I don't know if I can say this on radio, but it wasn't good." And he didn't like it. He said, they were just, we'll call it Humpty Dumpty on the dance floor. And I would like to see more younger folks learning how to do ballroom dancing, because it's more social, it's more cultivated, it's a higher level of and higher level of
of experience.
Of experience,
well,
yes.
You're making what you're saying reminds me of an interview I did just recently about the difference between classical art and modern art. Dance, unlike what you call Humpty Dumpty, and I think my listener knows what you're trying to say.
That's the way of putting it. That's all I'm saying.
Dance is it follows form. Modern art has no form; it just has expression and so on, and sort of emoting on canvas or in clay.
Right.
But dance follows a form. So why? What are some of the forms that would be beneficial for my listener or maybe his son or daughter to learn?
Well, we'll just start from the beginning, David. I always hear people say, "Oh, I cannot dance. I have 2 left feet. I have 2 left feet." I hear that over and over and over again. If you can walk straight, or you can walk backwards, or you can go to the side, you can dance. Dance is a trained physical dance. Anyone can dance. Some may dance better than others, but anyone can dance. And then I hear a lot of people say, "I have absolutely no rhythm." Well, you can learn your rhythms. That is just like when you're in school, what did you go to school for, David?
Well, I went in Kentucky.
And what did you...
Well, you asked me where I went to school?
What did you go to school for?
To read.
To read. I was going to say, well, I don't know if that's going to work or not, but before you went to school, you knew nothing in that field until you went to class and you studied and you learned how to read. Am I correct?
Right.
Well, that's the same way in dance. You come in, you learn form, you learn dance. It's very simple. We start, a lot of it's memory muscle, and a lot of people don't realize that. It's like when you're driving a stick shift car. First time you start driving, you have to think about the clutch, you have to think about changing the gears, and you have to think about the gas and putting on the brakes, and you think, oh my goodness, and I also have to drive. How can I ever do this? But muscle memory. A month later, you're just driving down the street, drinking a Coca-Cola, driving your car, maybe smoking a cigarette, talking on the phone, whatever, and driving stick shift, and you don't even realize you're doing it. Same way with dance. You learn just small parts at once, muscle memory in your feet. You get the feet worked down and you move on up the body. And it's very good muscle control, body control, everything in your body. You learn how to control it. Also, a lot of people with bad backs have really good luck with dance because we teach you correct posture and we can relieve back stress just, immediately. That's something you learn how to stand. I had a new client who actually is coming in today, and he's having a lot of back problems. He said, my back is really, really hurting me. And I said, well, let me look at you. We changed his posture. And he goes, that's amazing how that relieves it. I said, so what you need to do is you need to think about your posture, put your notes around the house, and think about what I taught you, and it relieves the pressure on your spine. So there's just many, many, many reasons why to learn how to dance.
Well, my listener sits way too much every day, and he knows it, but he can't do anything different. So what is it that he will be getting if he takes dance lessons, physically speaking? What physical benefits come?
Oh, everything.
Spine,
back, legs, arms. It works your whole entire body, and you're having fun and you're using your brain. And I think that's one reason people love to dance. It gives you a release. You may be very stressed out all day at your job and you're worried, you got deadlines to meet, you're working very hard, and then go take your dance lesson 1 hour. It's amazing how getting your mind totally off what you're thinking about at work, and it relieves the pressure, and it renews your spirit, totally renews your spirit, and you feel so much better. Then you can go back to your work in a controlled manner.
Well, now my listener's a guy. He's a man. His class would probably be one in the evening, right? So he's had his long day and he's exhausted from that. And now he has a new exhaustion to face. An hour in your classroom.
We're never exhausted. We're always having fun. It's a happy place. We call our studio the happy place because, the hardest part about getting into the studio and dancing is getting to the studio and putting your dance shoes on. And the rest is a piece of cake because you transfer yourself into a whole new area, a whole new mind frame, and it releases all the pressures you've had for the day, and you can think about something else that's enjoyable, and you get those endorphins running in your brain, and you get your brain thinking about what you're doing, and it's a wonderful experience.
You mentioned dance shoes. Now
Yes.
that just raises a question. I'm wearing just a pair of leather shoes that are tie-up, lace-up leather shoes. Are these suitable, or does my listener have to go and buy a pair of shoes to take dance lessons?
No, you do not have to go buy a pair of dance shoes. Leather shoes are great. Now, they are a little heavy, so once you get in there, you will probably want to get a little lighter weight shoe, which is a dance shoe, and it's got like a suede sole on it, and it fits your foot like a glove. So it's like putting dance socks on. They're little that have comfort and a little support. And we also have dance sneakers, which are really nice. If you're the kind of guy that likes to wear tennis shoes, we have them for dancing also.
You shouldn't wear tennis shoes at a dance lesson because tennis shoes are always very broad, aren't they?
Well, regular tennis shoes will stick to the floor, and so like if you're trying to turn or anything, you will stick to the floor. You want something that glides on the floor. So that's why leather shoes will glide on the floor.
Yeah, when you said it, the French word popped into my head. It's called glisser. Glisser is to slide, and it sounds like G-L-I-S-S-E-R. It sounds like you're sliding a little bit. And your shoe, if you're wearing tennis shoes, they'll be firm on the ground, and you don't want that.
Funny story. We had a guy come in the other day, and he's been taking with his wife, and she made him. He lost a bet, he said, but he's still coming in there. Now he's the first one in, and then the other day he came in and he had his new shoes on. And it was amazing, the change in his dance step. We were just like, are you kidding me? How much difference those dance shoes made. But he was really, really enjoying it. And the one thing he said was, I actually get to touch her. And he liked that.
Well, that I think that's very important. My listener is married. He's got a sweet wife, but they're not spending enough time together. And it seems like, on the Lord's Day morning, my wife and I we always have kind of crises on getting ready for church sometimes, and something often is lost, and Jeanette is trying to find something, and she's been kind of upset with me about various things, and I realized, well, I can't solve all these problems, and I really can't answer all these problems. So we were standing in the kitchen. I was doing some dishes. My listener thinks I do dishes all the time, and he's right. But there I was doing some dishes. You're a good man. And I just said, Jeanette, and I just put my arms around her. I said, I just kind of held her, and that's all I did. And that wasn't satisfactory in one sense, but it was in the sense that we're married. We have a promise in our marriage. We're going to work through our sense of disparateness, our sense of having alternate schedules. And so dancing has the same effect. You are touching your wife. You have her left hand, her right hand in your left hand, and you have your hand on not the small of, correct me about this, small of your back. If you always start out by putting your hand in the small of her back, but it really needs to go higher.
Well, you start there and move up to her little, what we call angel wing, the little part behind her shoulder, your little shoulder blade. So we call it the angel wing.
Now, tell my listener why the hand needs to be there.
The man controls the woman on the dance floor.
Talk about that.
Well, in today's society, we do texting and email, but the man on the dance floor actually leads the woman. But he's not saying, okay, now we're going to do a turnaround and we're going to do this step and we're going to do this step. He actually learns to communicate with physical abilities, with his hands, motion. So it's a whole new language. I call it the language of love on the dance floor. And I can go on a dance floor with anybody who is trained, and we train all our students basically the same. And so all the new students can dance with new students, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they kind of get a kick out of that because they don't have to talk. A guy raises his hand, a girl does a turnaround, a guy does different hand motions, and she knows exactly where to go and how to follow, and it just works out really well.
Well, how does my hand on the upper back of my wife's back, how does that hand tell her what to do? That doesn't seem like it's really saying enough.
Well, it does. It actually can control the whole body. You can actually dance one-sided, and you can move your partner all the way around the room with that control arm. We call that your driver arm. Any golfers out here?
The arm that's extended to the left. Mm-hmm. If my listeners are right-handed.
Right, and it actually drives the woman around the dance floor. So that is your driver, we call, because you can control her whole body. If you're turning or going straight, she can feel the action in where your body is linked up to your arm and shoulder, and it actually can control how she is moving and moving her body around. So you physically have that physical connection at all times. And you're right, we don't give enough hugs in this world today.
We don't.
We don't.
And dancing is a way of kind of instituting a regularized, rhythmic touching of your sweetheart. Well, Amy, I'm really impressed that you have not attempted to mention, not once yet in our chat here, the names of some of the dances. Tell us about some of the. If my listener has never gone with his wife dancing and has been too shy to try a class, what are some of the first steps or dances that one learns?
Well, we usually start them out with the rumba because it's basically a box. Now, if you know what a box is, then you can dance. Did you know that, David?
Yes.
It's very simple, very, very simple. And we start you out with a box. But I'd like to give kind of an idea of what kind of dances we...
Well, just back. A box is a series of steps that...
Makes a box.
You and your sweetheart make a complete turn.
No, it's not a turn. It's a box. You make a square...
A 90-degree turn.
No, it's a square box. You can rotate your box once you make your box. But like I said, we start from the very beginning, make it very simple. You basically create a box with your feet work. You start with your feet work, and then you can actually rotate your box. And then you can learn, the man will continue doing a box, and then he can raise his arm, and a woman will learn how to do a beautiful walk-around. So women love to turn on the dance floor, I've learned. Love to turn. They like to twirl. Something about twirling makes us happy.
So what's the key word to describe a rumba?
Oh, that's the dance of love.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of mushy. That doesn't make a picture.
Well, just to give you an idea of the types of dances we have foxtrot. Foxtrot is when you first meet somebody. Oh, you're strolling along. Oh, he's so nice. I just like him and everything. Foxtrot is a strolling, happy dance. Then we have the swing is when, I met somebody and we're just out having a really good time and we're swinging and dancing and it's very casual dance. And then we have the cha-cha. The cha-cha is a very flirty dance. Hey, I like you. Now I think I'm going to flirt with you. And then we go into the waltzes. I think I'm falling in love. I feel so good. I'm dancing. I always feel like a princess when I'm doing the waltz. And then we have the rumba, and that is the dance of love.
So there's a kind of a crescendo. Well, these steps. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I got one more. The last one's the best. Once you fall into love, and you get married and all that, then you have the tango, and the tango is the argument. Honey, you put too much money on that credit card. Give it back to me. But it is an argument on the dance floor. So that's your progression of dances on the dance floor. So it's all social. It's all it all has meaning, and it's a very interesting way to.
And it's a picture of my listener's life when he first met his sweetheart. Maybe if he's known her for a long time, it was at the end of high school, or maybe he was new in town and it was in the new church he's visiting, or someone another sweet lady in the same office down at the other end of the building. He met her in the hallway, and so you have this kind of progression.
It's progression.
The dance suggests the progression of life itself.
Exactly, and I think it has a lot of how it was created, also.
Well, I'm trying to remember an essay that I read a while back about dancing and the fact that in its physicality, the fact that the two partners are sweating a little bit. Of course, that's very good because sweating is a detoxifying activity. So
exactly.
you should sweat as much as you can. But of course, when you're on the dance floor, you don't want to because it's a little bit uncomfortable.
Well, you can always bring. If you're a big sweater, just bring a couple of shirts, go change. We have changing rooms. And believe you, a lot of men do. They'll just bring it. They know they sweat, so they just bring a couple of shirts and they change. No big deal.
But that's part of the fact that you can, when you have your hand on your wife's upper back there under that little part of
her angel wing.
Her angel wing. Yeah, that's right.
She's an angel. Mm-hmm.
That's right. You can feel a little perspiration through her clothing, and it's on your hand, and you feel it. There's something very visceral about that, and like I said, I'm trying to remember what I read about this, but it's a reminder of how how we're made. We're made as physical beings, and I think that's important to remember because the internet and networks and even radio and television, of course, they're all flat. They're all two-dimensional, and when you dance and you learn how, I think it's very important for a cultivated man to learn how. He is entering into the world that he's kind of forgotten with his work and his phone conversations and all the urgent emails that have to go out.
I think it's very important part of life to learn to dance. Through the years, it used to be very, very important. In the 50s, everyone danced. My father danced. I mean, it was a given. And if a man could dance, a man could get a woman. I mean, women love men who can dance. I think they love that they can take control. The feeling when you dance, there's just a certain feeling when you're on the dance floor. It's better than therapy. It's cheaper than therapy. It just makes you a happy, happy woman.
Amy, this is hearing Amy Anderson from the Ballroom in Hixson. Tell us how to find you on the internet, and if someone wants to give you a call to ask about classes, how do they reach you, Amy?
You can go to www.ballroominhixson.com. We are also on Facebook. That is the Ballroom at Hixson on Facebook. Please join us, and we always list what class we're doing, because on Saturdays we always do beginner class at 7:30 to 8:30. It's $5 a person. Where can you go for $5 a person and have fun with your date and learn something? And you can touch them and learn something. And you know what? You don't have to have a date. So you're out there and you're single, and we have a lot of single people. Come on down. There's plenty of people to dance with. No partner is required. So there is absolutely no excuse not to come and have a good time. And then following that at 8:30, we have what we call a practice dance, a social dance, and it's open to the public. We're always open to the public, and that is from 8:30 to 10 o'clock. It's $10 a person, and we play the 6 major dances, which is fox, waltz, tango, rumba, cha-cha, swing. You got that?
All right, say it again.
Foxtrot, waltz, tango, rumba, cha-cha, and swing. That's your 6 majors. We dance that all night long. We have guest dance host, and we also have a lot of pro teachers there. So we have a lot of people now. We pride ourselves in bringing in new people in the dance world. We want to be affordable. We want a different look at the dance world, because up to now, if you went to other dance studios, it's very, very, very expensive to dance, and a lot of people have shied away from that in this economy. But we believe that everyone should feel a joy of dancing. So that's why we opened up the ballroom. So we're affordable. We're fun-loving. You come in there, you're going to feel welcomed. I promise you. Everybody says hello. People dance with you. They will come up. You can sit there all night, and you will dance. I promise you, you will dance. And if you don't know how to dance, we actually instruct you the basic steps on the dance floor. And it's one of my, I get really tickled, and it makes me feel so wonderful when I see people go, oh my goodness, I really danced.
Well,
I danced on the dance floor.
I suggest my listener first let me just say where the ballroom is. The ballroom is on Middle Valley Road, pretty close to, it's kind of facing the Save-A-Lot grocery store.
Right, adjacent to the Save-A-Lot and Kevin's Grill and Chill.
And don't worry about going long distances to dance, because the teacher that you had, when he was teaching over at the old McKay's building, over on off Lee Highway. We would go. I live in Saudi Daisy. My wife and I would kind of have an evening of it. We'd go there, and that's a half-hour drive to have a dance lesson from a very competent instructor. And so you may not live in Hixson, but going to Hixson for a dance lesson with Amy Anderson, I think would be a great investment. Again, it's about the relationship. It's relational economics here, and we were talking about the Lord's Supper, how the Creator and His people sit together at a table. You have a relationship with your children and your wife. There's a special stewardship and a special affection that I think needs to be worked on. And if you're detecting that maybe this might be helpful to you, I'm offering Amy Anderson as a resource to help you.
Oh, well, thank you. And if you're an advanced student, my partner, Tammy Harrelson, is an advanced teacher, and she's for the ones who have been dancing for years and they want to, brush up on their skills and get back into it. And our phone number, which I want to tell everybody, is 394-6428.
And so, what nights does Amy Harrelson or Tammy Harrelson have her class?
She's on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays.
That's the advanced.
Also.
Okay.
She is the advanced.
Amy Anderson, thank you so much for joining me here at Nuganomics.com.
I appreciate it.
You've been hearing Amy Anderson of the Ballroom in Hixson, and we're talking about the physical world and the need to get back to enjoying it and making the most of it. This is David Tula, so we've got some abstract things to look at in just a minute about the school.
Monday, high settling into the upper
Amy,
80s
thank you so
tonight.
much. I hope we got it all in.
The upper 60s.
Yes, we did.
Partly
That was
cloudy,
fun.
slight chance of an afternoon
I hope we got it all. I think my listener, my listener really needs to come by your shop. He really does.
Yeah.
He needs to come by and sign up with his wife, or if he's not married, his girlfriend.
It's an excellent
$25 gift
experience.
card.
It
Visit
really is.
HopeJoeHappyMonday.com
Well,
for
you
more
know.
info.
Sounds like you need to get back on the dance floor.
I know, and it's so much closer. You know, it's.
Now, Friday night, we have, we'll be doing the East Coast Swing, 7:30, like I said, just come by
Hunting, fishing, NASCAR.
for an hour's class, bring that little cute wife of yours, and I love it, it is a beginning East Coast Swing. I'm in there learning the man's part, so I'm learning the beginning man part. So it's obvious.
We haven't had a lot of we only had about maybe 10 lessons.
That's what you want, come in there and then stay for the party. Like I said, everybody is staying for the parties. And, well, I don't know how to dance. Oh, yes, thank you. I don't know how to dance, but it doesn't matter. We'll have you up and running.
Sorry, we didn't get to your.
Oh, we don't matter. We have plenty to talk about.
I always have priority on the listener, and the viewer, well,
some of the area's largest industries, to Bryan College, RevTel
Oh, I
is
should
the
have
service that's
texted
saving
Bob.
money and making our local economy more efficient. I love to see my customers succeed. My company has helped hundreds of other small businesses accomplish their service and profits as they serve their local community. Let's see if RevTel.net can help your business. Look us up at RevTel.net today.
Want to save money on credit card costs? Are charges leaking thousands of nickels in your small business? Hi, David Toulis here. Petroleum Card Services of Chattanooga has been serving small business since 1995 and will be happy to explain how to save money when your customers use plastic. If you are interested in holding on to those nickels and dimes from credit card fees, call 298-1294 for a free analysis. That's 298-1294. Ask for Bob. 298-1294. Petroleum Card Services. Man, plug the leak.
The Man Radio Station. Hunting, fishing, NASCAR, Tennessee talk, Southern rock, kickin' country. WSDQ Dunlap, WEPG South Pittsburgh, The Copperhead, WSDT Sunny Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Steve Kathan. It's a day of reckoning for about a dozen baseball players who are about to get the word on doping suspensions. We're live with CBS's Steve Futterman.
And Steve, we expect the announcement in 1 hour. The biggest name by far on the list is New York Yankees star Alex Rodriguez. If Major League Baseball has its way, we will not hear much of this until 2015.
It's an A-bomb from A-Rod.
MLB is expected to suspend Rodriguez for more than 200 games. That would extend through all of next season, but it probably will not take effect immediately. An appeal is expected, and during that process, Rodriguez would be allowed to play. And the other big players expected to be suspended: Nelson Cruz of the Texas Rangers and Johnny Peralta of the Detroit Tigers. Reporting live, CBS News.
19 American diplomatic posts in Muslim countries remaining closed this week in caution after the heightened terror threat revelations last week. Intelligence suggested operatives were in place to carry out attacks. CBS News national security analyst Juan Zarate says attention is focused on the al-Qaeda presence in Yemen and a key bomb maker.
We're worried about all sorts of innovations coming from al-Siri. He's not only a master bomber, but he's innovative. And he's thoughts that come from
California Bay Area rail commuters going about business as usual, heading to work. The state emergency for suspended.
That's the marketing language.
There's no reason why we have to continue this drama, continue this stress on the public and on the workforce.
Mark says the union misrepresented the proposal has been given. People will tell you wait for word on when they can return home. Forced out the Union Pacific train derailed yesterday. State Trooper Scott Moreau officials say leaks in the cars have now been contained. Another judge has extended Ohio's court decree that deals with voter ID and provisional ballots. Advocates argue if the decree
This is David Toulis. Thank you for joining me here at Nugonomics.com. I wanted you to make note of some good local economy resources. If you are a business and need internet connection and phone service, I suggest you go to revtel.net, and David Snyder can help you with your phone needs. If you're sick and tired of subsidized local company, local government phone providers, or the big people, you should go to a very local economy minded provider of telephone and internet services. That's Revtel. Revtel based in Revtel in Vol State. There are two names there, based in Dayton, Tennessee. Just recently penetrated the Chattanooga market and has gained access to this market from the local cartel, and is now able to offer by arrangement, right? Probably by contract, and is able to provide services to your small business. So if you are a local economy-minded person and want to encourage a local business that's in this field, then do contact David Snyder at revtel.net, or just make a phone call. And if you run credit cards in your business, I suggest you contact Bob Benjamin at Petroleum Card Services. Every time that credit card is used in your business, you have to pay some cents out to the middleman, and you can reduce your expenses with Petroleum Card Services. Bob is a long-time oil industry man, and is involved in providing that service and maintenance for your device. And I wanted to make mention of the Ducks people, formerly known as Duck Busters, the Thompsons. Joan and Dick run Ducks in Middle Valley, and they have a service range that goes way past Chattanooga, all 150 miles around the area. It will send a truck and a crew, professionally trained crew, to reduce the grot and source of pollution in your HVAC system. Also, Advantage Printing, Alan Jones in Brainerd, is a great place to have your printing done. All the services, all the mailing services. If you have a big printing project coming up, don't expect just to drop it on anybody who's a printer. You need to call that person and discuss how the product needs to be drafted and designed, how large. If you're mass mailing it, you need to know exactly what is allowed in mass mailing. Don't show up at any printer with a very dark colored mailer and expect his ink to show up in the mailing label area, because it won't show up. You have to know all about that. So Alan Jones will advise you and your small business or your nonprofit organization about the right use of the mail if it's a mailer going out. And he's a very fine man, a professional, whom I highly recommend. And here in Sunny Days, we've got this great little place that will clean your car or your boat. It's called detailing. It's something I've learned about just recently. Detailing can increase the value of a vehicle if you are trying to sell it. And Chuck Giannunzio is the man to contact. And that's Country Boys and Toys here in Sunny Daisy, right next to Daisy Feed and Seed, which is also a neat place to shop. Every Friday, by the way, is Panera Posse in Hixson, 6:45 a.m. at the Panera Bread Store. I'm invited to go, and I invite you if you want to join me, since it's always a small group, and since it's just you, my listener, just one listener, you can get together with me and friends of mine. As I said, a small crowd at Panera. It's called Panera Posse. We round up the bad guys, we chase down the bad guys, and we round up the specie, which of course is the money, the silver money, right? We round up the specie and put it back in the bank. That's what we do as members of the Panera Posse, as we like to jokingly call ourselves. We always discuss everything from theology to economics to the latest book, which one of our members might be reading. So these are some folks to make mention of, and I want you to support our station. We are the Copperhead station, Copperhead 1240. We're owned by one man. We're not part of any media chain. We have the odd idea that the Minority Report will be something which we can make a living on, and that's what I'm doing. I'm offering the Minority Report, and I do thank you for joining me. My name is David Toulis, and I'm the mild-mannered editor of Nuganomics.com. I'm working on a couple of pieces, by the way. I've got one piece that I need to finish writing today about Jeremiah, and maybe I should just mention it now since I've brought it up. The whole idea of the Rothschilds. The Rothschild banking family had a dictum. I couldn't nail down where I've read this, but it was in one of my books, I suppose, or maybe in one of those expensive newsletters that I got a copy of. And the theory of investing that very notable Jewish family followed is something like this. In a nutshell, it's one sentence with a semicolon in the middle of it. And it says, when you hear the orchestra and the parade and the confetti is falling down in the street, that's when you sell. When you hear the roar of cannon in the distance and war is looming, that's when you buy. Okay, why do you buy when you hear the cannon booming in the distance? Well, because everybody is fleeing. Everybody's fleeing the marketplace, and prices have plunged. Then you buy. What's happening when there's a parade? When the victory parade is in progress and the confetti is twirling down and blotting out the sky, almost the sun, since there's so much of it, and it's filling the sidewalks, and the waving crowds are all holding their hands up, and the soldiers are marching through the Arc de Triomphe, as the Roman legions did when they came back from victory in a great procession in Rome or in Paris, where it was. That's when you sell. Why do you sell then? Because that's when everything is priced very high. And what we have to figure out is what's generally the trend. Is there a mega trend that we're part of? And I'm not going to advise you on investments, but I do have my hunches, and my own hunch is that we are facing a debt crisis, which will stampede the crowd into away from abstract investments and into more physical investments. There's certain abstract investments that will probably do very well, but whenever there's a stampede or a crisis of confidence, the rush is toward liquidity. Liquidity, of course, is cash. Cash would be Federal Reserve notes in bundles or bags or briefcases full, or held on deposit at some fund or bank, or gold or silver. But that's liquidity. Liquidity is what happens when people are not sure of the system itself, when there's a systemic doubt. That's what happened in the credit freeze of 2008, where no one bank would lend to any other because each suspected that the other was insolvent, but wasn't telling that it was insolvent. And so banks, interbank loans collapsed, and the central banks had to flood the banking system with credit. And so why was Jeremiah at the height of the siege of Jerusalem? Why was Jeremiah buying land? Well, if you remember the story, it's in Jeremiah 32. This is fresh in my mind as we heard this in the reading yesterday in the worship service. And the short of it is that Nebuchadnezzar was invading in the 10th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah. And Nebuchadnezzar was, of course, a Chaldean from Babylon, and he was besieging the city. It's funny that just before I left, I had Jacob, my 10-year-old boy, read me a few pages from The Swamp Fox, a story about the American general who fought the British. And the chapter we're in is about the attack on Fort Watson. And the colonialists, working very rapidly at night, cut down all kinds of logs and built a tower outside Fort Watson. Fort Watson was held by the British. I believe this is in South Carolina. And the firing, he was big enough for 6 sharpshooters at the top. So the 6 men climbed to the top with, and the General Mayhem checked their ammunition. He checked their powder horns. He said, make sure the powder horns are filled to the tip. fill the powder horn to the tip. And then he sent them on up. They built this rig overnight. It was 40 feet off the ground. It wasn't near the wall of Fort Watson, but it was high enough and near enough so that the sharpshooters at the very top could look down into the compound where the redcoats were and fire into it. Now, when I had to leave for work here to meet you, we had not heard the first ball fire out from those from those rifles from the colonialists, but I'm sure the next reading, the 10-year-old will be describing the carnage of the tower. But in the story of Jerusalem, the siege towers were generally raised up against the walls of the city, and effectively a mountain was built against the wall, and that would allow for the invading troops to come in. And the prophet, of course, Jeremiah's a prophet. He was one of God's men, and he had been telling the people of Israel to repent of their sins. Of course, whenever in Christianity you hear about repenting of sins, that brings into the picture the standard of conduct, right? The standard of conduct for the people whom God is intending to correct, and the standard of conduct against whom God makes judgment against those who will not repent or who are not given the grace to repent. But here you have the people of Israel who've seen God's miracles for centuries almost, and they're following their own ways. They're burning incense to idols on the roofs of their houses, not in the corners of their houses in secret, but they're doing it openly on the rooftops, and they're engaged in all kinds of false worship, doing things that God had not commanded to do in worship, and including sacrifice of children to the god Moloch. And so in this judgment, the prophet has been imprisoned by the king, right? He's in ward in the king's house as a prisoner, and he gets word in the courtyard there. It's kind of like house arrest. He gets word from a relation that there's a field that's for sale, and that he has the first right of refusal to it, since it's in his family's name. It's in Anathoth, and so the son of my uncle, who was in Anathoth, came and said, "Would you buy this land?" And well, in a way, it's kind of absurd to have a man of God who's been denouncing the people and warning them to surrender to the invading army, just throw down your weapons and surrender. It's all over. It's finished. And he's in prison because he's saying this, right? He's saying that the tribe of Judah, the great tribe, should call it quits and just give in. And so here he is in this situation, the one who's saying to surrender and just throw down all arms, let the invading hordes come into our city and drag us away. He is saying these things, but on the other hand, he's also buying land. But he's buying land, of course, at discount. He's buying land for only 17 shekels. And the biblical narrative points out how twice, it points out twice that the narrator describes the weighing out of the money. And of course, as I've been making note at neweconomics.com, money has to be weighed. Now, of course, modern money is not weighed because it's not referential. It's not. It's on paper or it's digital, and it has no reference anymore to anything of value, which of course would be gold or silver. And so the narrator makes it very clear that the money is weighed out, 17 shekels of silver, and there's a big kind of elaborate deed creating ceremony, a transfer ceremony, which is described in some detail, which I think is very interesting, that the scriptures have this detailed description in Jeremiah 32 about this land transaction. But it's important because the promise to Jeremiah is that God will restore this people to that place later. Later they will be brought back. And in the Old Testament times, of course, the land meant something that it doesn't mean now. There's no significance to Israel, the land there at all, above any other place. I mean, Israel is no more a holy land than Saudi Daisy is, or Marion County, or South Pittsburgh, which is drying out from the storm. But back then, the land was a kind of a sign of covenant, and the whole covenant of God with this people. took place on this land, and the land was incorporated by various signs into the life of that people. And the reason God is judging the people and wants them to surrender is that they have had, as he says, as the prophet says, they have had their back turned to God. He says, and they have turned to me the back and not the face, though I taught them, rising up early and teaching them. Yet they have not listened to receive instruction. So we have, the reason I wanted to write about this is because I think that we have in Chattanooga and in every other part of the great federal republic, we have this judgment that's coming, and the judgment is visible in several ways, and I think it's important that we recognize these things as judgments. And the reason I want to mention this is because most people don't see it that way, right? I'm David Toulis, your mild-mannered editor. I'm offering here at Nuganomics.com a minority report. I'm pointing out things that other people will simply say, well, that's just balderdash. That's not true. Or they'll say something like, well, I have never thought of it that way. And that's what we're about on our show. We want to look at things in a different way. And so what I want to mention, if I could, a couple of things that are part of this sort of approach to solutions, right? We have all kinds of people offering solutions to crime. We have solutions to the economic problems of the country. Of course, those solutions are always political. They're almost always political, and they are always in terms of master-servant relationships. In other words, employment. And I think we can have prosperity apart from employment. By the way, I think that employment, as slavery was in the olden days, is not the ideal economic model, though it is in the free market. And we live in Tennessee, a free market state, and a right-to-work state, which means that there's fluidity allowed in the employment marketplace. Though it does mean that you probably, if you are an employee, you are at will, which means that you can be fired at any time for any reason or for no reason. But you can't, of course, you cannot be fired for the wrong reason, right? You can't be fired because you're too old. You can't be fired because you're a religious person who has your holy day on Saturday or Sunday. You can't be fired because you're a woman. You can't be fired because you're black or a minority. You can't be fired because you're a homosexual. Those are equal treatment laws from the federal world that control that. So there's a federal cause of action if you are fired for the wrong reason. But you can't be fired for no reason. And you can be fired for a bad reason. But you just can't be fired for the wrong reason in our federal structure. So my thinking is about employment, that we can have prosperity apart from the regulated activity, which is called employment. It is an artificial activity, especially when you look at the idea of being self-employed, right? If you're self-employed, can you identify the time and hour and the contract in which you agreed to employ yourself? When did that happen? I'm afraid that is a legal fiction that many people take part in. It's a fanciful artifice that is actually false. I think it's probably false. If you thought about it in terms of the perjury statute, if you can't identify when it was you hired yourself and what terms they were, then you might be perjuring yourself to make any statement in public to any government official about that activity, because I think it is a fiction. And so just no one's going to accuse you of perjury because you say you're self-employed, but it is a fiction that you can, if you understand it, perhaps shun it. Well, so I've mentioned, let me just get back here to the whole question about Jeremiah. He was buying land for silver in a market which was at the bottom. Okay, he was buying at discount, and of course the seller at that point was delighted to get 17 shekels. He probably was desperate for the money, and here Israel is about to be consumed by a terrible invader. The Chaldeans were a very bloody and violent people, and they are being under the siege mounds are rising against the walls of Jerusalem. And the Lord is telling them that He will burn that city through His servants the Chaldeans. Of course, his servant Nebuchadnezzar was a tyrant, a monarch, a royal man who was in fact God's servant. God used him for his own purposes, as we were saying earlier about storms and flood in South Pittsburgh, or things like that outside of God's providence. And we are here in the South as opposed to up in the North. Here in the South, the understanding of God's providence is more general, even though the people who speak of such things often don't have any personal connection to Christianity. They're not professing Christians, but they understand that this is true, and it makes sense to say, well, I thank God that twister missed my trailer home by 30 feet, and they can thank God for that. But for people who truly believe in God, then it's important to recognize that nothing happens by chance. There's no such thing as an accident. If you have a certain number of days in your life, and your last day will be your last day no matter what you do. I mean, you could go out and get the mail or not go out and get the mail. You could go get into your car, put your gun on your holster under your jacket because you have a concealed carry permit, and it doesn't matter that you have that gun. It doesn't matter that you forgot that gun. Okay, if it's on your last day, and God has ordained your death on that day, it will happen, and you just have to be. I think you have to be resigned. The idea that God is sovereign over all things brings to the Christian a sense of humility and subjection and a sense of resignation. I think resignation is a helpful attitude to have, especially if you're, look on other areas about your portfolio, right? Your lack of income, your lack of savings. The average American seems to have about $3,000 in savings and a very short horizon for income. And we're going to talk with a car dealer real soon about the people he sees who come in to buy cars. That there are so many people who have no money. They have no money, and yet they're buying cars on their bad risks. They're buying cars on debt. I wanted to get to a couple other things that I'm kind of running out of time to mention. But one of them is the top of the Sunday paper about. The headline was "City to Criminals, Hard Time is Coming," and we have again a solution to a problem. The solution to street crime is what? Well, it's to hire a federal prosecutor. Okay, the city government of Chattanooga is going to spend $60,000 to hire someone in an alien jurisdiction. In federal jurisdiction, city taxes are going to be spent to pay a man in an alien jurisdiction, which is federal court, to prosecute people who are identified as gang members and what the story calls drug kingpins here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. And these people are, when they're arrested, they're going to be put into prison, 10-year to lifetime sentences for being young and ambitious and entrepreneurial in the world of narcotics, perhaps, or a protection racket. And you're put into prison for 30 years. Like Joe Swafford, who ran Broadway Home and Garden on South Street. He was involved in selling precursor materials for meth production. He's in prison for 30 years. For selling polar ice and such things that are used by illegal entrepreneurs. This is David Toulis, and you're listening to Nuganomics.com. Nuganomics.com is our show.
Everywhere. On your AM radio at 1240, 910, or 1190. On the net, go to copperhead1240.com. Take Copperhead Radio to listen on the go on your smartphone.
Okay, so
been open in the Chattanooga area since 1917. This shoe repair business has been in the same family for 4 generations. Buddy's repairs shoes, boots, orthopedic build-ups, golf gloves, belts, holsters, wallets, purses, and a lot of other special repair requests. Buddy's also carries genuine 100% leather belts and holsters. You can even customize your own. Veteran, military, police, fire, and paramedic discounts. Buddy thanks you for your service. Buddy Shoe Repair, 5221 Hixson Pike. This Italian cobbler has a peach of a wife. Open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Closed Wednesday and Sunday. Call 423-870-8911.
After this milestone, expect some sunshine and pretty good weather for your Monday. High settling in at the upper 80s tonight. Lows in the upper 60s. High is 3 chances of an afternoon for Tuesday. Back in the upper 80s. Scattered showers, of course, more likely toward the mid-80s. Governor Johnson is offering extra fun cooking on Monday.
I've kind of lost sight of a couple of losses. The conversion of animate to inanimate. School succeeds in this private animal. Hold on. Hi, this is David Tullis. Thank you for joining me here at Nuganomics.com. As a lover of local economy, I wanted to just mention how mischievous this e-verify system will be if the feds get it through. According to John Cochran, writing in the Wall Street Journal on Friday, the system will be one that will essentially require you to obtain federal permission to be employed, which is to say to work in employment, which is, of course, the official economy. He says that E-Verify is the real monster. If this part of the bill passes, all employers will be forced to use the government-run web-based system that checks potential employees' immigration status, right? It's against the leakage of the border. That means every American will have to obtain the federal government's prior approval in order to earn a living. Of course, that's, again, earn a living in the official economy. E-Verify might seem harmless now, Mr. Cochran says, but missions always creep and bureaucracies expand. Suppose that someone convicted of viewing child pornography is found teaching. There's a media hoopla. The government has this pre-employment check system. Surely we should link E-Verify to the criminal records of pedophiles. And why not all criminal records? We don't want alcoholic airline pilots, disbarred doctors, fraudster banksters, and so on, sneaking through. And he goes on to say next, E-Verify will be attractive as a way to enforce hundreds of other employment laws and regulations. In the age of big data, the government can easily E-Verify age, union membership, education, employment history, and whether you've paid income taxes and signed up for health insurance. And it's, of course, the E-Verify proponents, who are Republicans, assume that it's efficient and accurate, and we know that government programs and government databases are often a mess. And so if this passes, what you'll have is an increasing pressure against the employment world, the whole concept, the whole fiction of employment. I think you'll have more pressure against it, and you'll have more people operating outside the system, as in Italy and Spain, where whole enterprises are off the books, if you will. They're in the private sector. They're in what I would suggest is the free market. And right now, the biggest free market actors in employment are Hispanics and illegals. They're the people who compromise the hardest working people, probably, in the area, and they work often illegally. They work for cash. They don't use the banking system. Of course, they're very vulnerable to illicit treatment by corporations and job managers and foremen and others. They're vulnerable to abuse, to not being paid. They're vulnerable to not having their reimbursements given to them. E-Verify will just enlarge that marketplace while providing untold agony to other people here in the local economy. And again, we have this whole problem of imposing laws for some ostensible good from a Republican, local economy or national economy, free market perspective. But it really is just another disaster waiting to happen. And I mention the employment sector because we want there to be freedom in local economy. We want there to be prosperity in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, Marion County. And we don't want there to be, we don't like the idea of prosecution, okay? We have Bill Killian saying that we need to have another prosecutor, and that, hey, the city government will pay for him. And that's not reducing street crime. Here you have another federal solution, which is more force, more putting people into prison. There's a woman quoted in the Chattanooga Times Sunday story who says, "You're going to keep on putting them in jail? Ask Flanora Woods, who heads the Alton Park Development Corporation. That's massive incarceration with no solutions." And this is not stopping crime ahead of time. This is not society having an answer. This is the mayor of a municipal corporation, Chattanooga, Mayor Andy Burke. He wants to fight crime, and so he's got this very ferocious idea of having young men who are aberrant in their ways, who've made mistakes, who are in the wrong market, if you will. They're involved in the wrong kind of traffic, if you will. Again, that's as federally defined, because drugs are a federal issue. And they've made some mistakes. They have a kind of short-term perspective. they dislike law, they dislike police, they dislike courts, and they are defiant of convention. But here we are, we're going to have the federal prosecutor putting them into federal jurisdiction and making sure that if there's a shooting or a crime or some actionable offense, that they will be in prison for decades, just decades. Why do people keep turning to prisons for a solution? Why is Andy Burke convinced that we just need to have more people in prison and that will solve our problem? What about the ruined lives of the people he's putting into prison? These rough fellows, can they not be redeemed? Is there no way they can be given ways of repenting of their egoism and their pride and their carrying weapons and thinking that if they just show the butt of their 45s that they can get their way? Certainly there are things that can be given to these young men that are not just the force of law. But if you're a police officer, that's all you have. You only have laws to enforce and arrests to make. You can't solve problems that are really spiritual. And I think that's where Christianity has some use. And I think the Christian people in Chattanooga need to ask themselves, what can we do to encourage young men who have a bad way about them to be maybe to find service to others? Because the problem with the gang member is that he's thinking of himself. He's not thinking in terms of the marketplace. If he could be given an idea of making a profit by serving other people in a licit trade, in a lawful calling, then we have a solution. I don't think it's a federal prosecution and a federal arrest that's going to be the solution. That's just cleaning up the mess that's been made. What about having a free market and having religion, if you will, see their service in this area of the gang? Now, I wanted to mention something about another government solution, and that is something that Kevin Hardy, writing in the Sunday paper, wrote very well about this whole massive testing scheme that public school students are subject to. Testing is a form of managerial pornography, and these tests are means of control. They are means of depriving the local school system of any sense of its own bearings. It's impossible for a county to run a corporation which is called the public school and to have control of what goes on in the classrooms. It is impossible anymore. If you have your children in the public school, which is a legacy system, you are submitting them to strangers who have perspectives and ideas that if you could hear them articulated, you might strongly and warmly disagree with. In his story, Kevin Harding says, many complain that kids are over-tested and that the focus on testing has 4th, 5th, and 6th graders stressing over state exams the way college students stress over final exams. They think classrooms have become too focused on tests and that the things that make school meaningful and memorable, hands-on projects, experiments, trips, are too often going by the wayside to make room for testing. There's a quote from Whitwell Middle School teacher Vicki Wells: "We are testing our kids to death. We are testing our kids to death." And what's important is to notice that the testing data is never personal. Just like public health, the whole public health world does not care about any one patient. Public health never cares about the individual. It can't. By conception, public health cannot care for you, your daughter, your son, your wife. And so that perspective is useless for the caring of one who's ill or who has some kind of medical problem. And in the same way, the public school system does not understand the individual. And the test data never goes back to the teacher so that the teacher can say, okay, son, you've got a lot of material wrong in these areas. Why don't we beef up your reading in, let's say, history or grammar? Maybe you need to do some more work in division, perhaps. And so it's not useful. Okay, but of course it can't be useful because this is part of the security apparatus of the state, and you cannot have the teacher prying into the test question because they might get out, right? And then you have your means of control revealed. You might have a kind of Snowden problem, right? If the teacher knows what's on the test, the actual test, then you have revelations about what's being done to the student. And I think what we have to accept that we're going to have this legacy system in Chattanooga and Hamilton County for a long time. They'll probably won't be voted out of existence until probably when your children start having maybe 6th and 7th graders themselves that this might happen. And it will come, the pressure for the disbanding of public schools in the Chattanooga area will be economic stress. There will be economic stresses that will come, and they will coincide with a rising in the mind of the public, a sense of the futility of the public education enterprise. Because I do believe that it is a fatal and lethal system for the individual. Public schools are not designed for your child. They are designed for the mass. Okay? They are designed for national economy, national government, to supervise you and to supervise your children. And the testing system, which David Cook, by the way, in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, writes very well about. He's written 2 or 3 very good columns on the Metro page in the past 3 or 4 months that are right on the mark. But if you accept the premise of public schools as helping market failure, you accept those premises, and you accept that you can rightly delegate the intelligence and soul of your children to strangers who are state employees, then you're not going to be involved in recuperating and revitalizing the life of your children. You can't take that burden on, because you have too much internal distance. I made a mark here on my Sunday paper. Let's see. It says, the testing regime is so intense that one woman was saying that after TCAP tests, school it's as if it were over. There's all this work beforehand, and then after the test takes place, it's as if nothing else is worth doing. She says they rarely have homework for weeks leading up to the TCAP because they spend days drilling in test prep. And once TCAP wraps up in April, she said, it's like school is over because the most important event has passed, even though there are weeks left on the academic calendar. Quote, it seems like there's not much emphasis on learning because they're taking all those tests. Well, the testing system is well described in one of my all-time favorite books, and it's called The Underground History of American Education by John Taylor Gatto. It's a book I read very, very carefully, and I've often consulted it for the language, the very rich language that he uses. He says, before you can reach a point of effectiveness in defending your own children or your principles against the assault of blind social machinery, you have to stop conspiring against yourself by attempting to negotiate with a set of abstract principles and rules which by its nature cannot respond. Under all its disguises, that is what institutional schooling is, an abstraction which has escaped its handlers. An abstraction which has escaped its handlers. Nobody can reform it. First, you have to realize that human values are the stuff of madness to a system. In systems logic, the schools we have are already the schools the system needs. The only way they could be much improved is to have kids eat, sleep, live, and die there. Schools got the way they were at the start of the 20th century as part of a vast, intensely engineered social revolution in which all major institutions were overhauled to work together in a harmonious managerial efficiency. Ours was to be an improvement on the English system, which once depended on a shared upper-class culture for its coherence. Ours would be subject to a rational framework of science, law, instruction, and mathematically derived merit. And he talks about how J.P. Morgan reorganized the American marketplace into a cooperating world of trusts at the end of the 19th century. He was creating a business and financial system to interlink with the subsystem of government, the subsystem of schooling, and other subsystems to regulate every other aspect of national life. None of this was conspiratorial. Each step of it was purchased with coin and a keen understanding of human nature. Each increment was rationally defensible, but the net effect was the destruction of small town, small government America, strong families, individual liberty, and a lot of other things. People weren't aware they were trading for a regular corporate paycheck. He says that the public school enterprise is, he says, spare yourself the agony of thinking of this as a conspiracy. It was and is a fully rational transaction, the very epitome of rationalization engendered by a group of honorable men. All honorable men. The real conspirators were ourselves, John Taylor Gatto says. When we sold our liberty for the promise of security, we became like children in a conspiracy against growing up, sad children who conspire against their own children, consigning them over and over to the denaturing vats of compulsory state factory schooling. And he said, I was trying to find a passage this morning in which he compares testing, standardized testing, to a sort of managerial pornography. I couldn't find it, but I had marked another one, and it says, standardized tests, like schools themselves, have lost their moral legitimacy. They correlate with nothing of human value, and their very existence perverts curriculum into a preparation for those extravagant rituals. And we heard the quote from the woman in the Chattanooga Times Free Press. Indeed, all paper and pencil tests are a waste of time, useless as predictors of anything important, unless the competition is rigged. As a casual guide, they are probably harmless. As a sorting tool, they are corrupt and deceitful. A test of whether you can drive is driving. Performance testing is where genuine evaluation will always be found. There surely can't be a normal parent on earth who doesn't judge his or her child's progress by performance. And he has, his perspective is one that I value greatly because it esteems the individual. John Taylor Gatto is a humanist. He's a Roman Catholic background. He's married to a Presbyterian, apparently. And I value his perspective, even though he has often very harsh things to say about people of my Christian background, the Reformed Church. He's not very favorable of it, and he blames the Reformation, people like John Calvin and the Puritans, for the whole idea of school. And I'm not sure somehow how to interact with him on these points, which condemn me, but nonetheless, he is very useful in his critique. He is the former state teacher of the year in New York, and the New York City teacher of the year before he was fired. They couldn't stand him any longer, so they fired him by administrative duplicity. So I mention this because the idea of testing is that we have to have confidence in numbers, in impersonal numbers, and your child cannot ever. There's no room for a book like any of the ones I read. Okay, in my house there are books always all over the place. My children pick up what they want, and ignore what they want. We have books available on many topics. I leave magazines lying around like the Freeman, right, hoping that the 17-year-old will find something about the end of privacy or something that he would want to read. And I'll leave out copies of the Wall Street Journal that conveniently they're on the coffee table in the front room, and sometimes things I leave there are read by the young people. And but the school system is designed for you to delegate the whole of the care of your child's knowledge and character to the experts. Local economy has an alternative view. It suggests, as I think the Christian religion, would suggest that you take personal responsibility for your children, and that you find somehow that you've exhausted your delegation. You've exhausted the giving away of your responsibilities to the good people. Look how they've tempted you already. Look at how you're tempted with your parents. You don't have to worry about them. There are schemes to make your parents poor so they can apply for Medicaid. There are poverty dump schemes where you can make them poor just before the deadline, and they can have everything cared for by the taxpayer. And there are many other things where you have a responsibility and you're told, look, we can handle that for you. There's a program for that. And here you're a dad, right? You're a dad here in Chattanooga, South Pittsburgh, and you're told by the good people, look, we have a system in place. In fact, you've paid for it, right? You've paid for this system by transaction taxes at the state level, at county level, and city level. And you pay a tax on the privilege of holding property in our county and in our city. And so since you've already paid for it, you might as well send your children to it. I mean, that would be a bad investment for you to pay for something and to not take advantage of it. After all, it was established for your benefit as a dad, as a parent, and you should take advantage of it. You should join us in our great enterprise of Hamilton County schools and Marion County schools. You need to think like we do, but is it possible? I mean, is it possible that maybe you're being tempted here? Maybe you're being tempted. If a man came up to you with a gun and said, "I'm going to steal your money from you," and then that man reappears around the next corner of the building and says, "Oh, here I am. I've got a school here for you. You need to come in here and enjoy the free thing that I've set up for you. It's intended for you and your benefit. Why don't you come sit down and have a lemonade?" Well, I think you would probably look at that lemonade stand that the former robber has set up with a bit of suspicion. You would say, well, you took that money from me, and now you want me to enjoy something that you've prepared for me? Is that what you're saying? Well, I think it's going to take some grievous problems in our economy, some grievous losses on your investment portfolio before you start thinking about credit and the loss of credit, because we have given way too much credit to the national economy machinery here in Hamilton County that has its point of origin in Nashville and the Tennessee Constitution. We've maybe put too much trust in the good people's offerings, in their ministry, because after all, it is for them a ministry. They want your child to be like them and to have confidence in the eternity of their system. But I'm not sure that system is going to last a long time. I'm really not. And I'm trying to figure out, what do I do? And if you join me tomorrow, my listener here at Nuganomics.com, we can think some more about these things. And I hope we can come up with small steps, small solutions. This is David Toulis, and you're listening to Nuganomics.com. I appreciate you joining me.
Frustrated with the high cost of phone service? Do you long for the freedom to work with a locally owned and experienced phone and internet company that understands the needs of small business? I'm David Snyder, owner of RevTel.net and Ballstate.net in Dayton. My companies have been providing